If it goes right, it's a slice. If it goes left, it's a hook. If it goes straight, it's a miracle. This is Out of Bounds. If it's happening in the world of golf, we're talking about it. Coverage, debate, discussion, pro golf and local golf. Let's do it. This is Out of Bounds. And here are your hosts, Nate Sharman and Josh Durso.
Welcome back to the Out of Bounds podcast. Josh Durso and Nate Sharman here, getting you caught up on the biggest golf stories of the last 2 or 3 weeks. We have got the fall season winding forward. Nate, man, here we are again. Big weekend for Tom Kim.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch on Sunday. You know, it was kind of nice being in that, being over in Vegas where the football kind of ended for the day, right? As you know, that Jets game, those 4 p.m. games were ending. And then I was able, I was a big Bills fan. I was able to flip after that game and watch a little bit of Tom Kim kind of flipping back and forth, and then seeing him, make that victorious putt on 18 and then flip right over back to the Sunday Night Football game where the Bills, barely edged the Giants. But this is a golf podcast, but, Tom Kim getting that victory was pretty cool, Josh. It's his third career win, second back-to-back wins at the Shriners as he won last year. And Josh, he becomes the first player since, you guessed it, Eldrick Tiger Woods to win 3 times on tour before the age of 21, or at the youngest age. I know he's 21 now, but yeah, since Tiger Woods, this is a pretty big stat for a guy like Tom Kim. I guess that begs the question, Josh, where do you think, Tom Kim goes with his career? What do you think his kind of career arc or so to say looks like in the next 10 to 15 years?
I would say it looks pretty similar to Ludvig Aberg's, right?
Yeah,
that's what I think. You can. Yeah. So, I look at those two guys and I see the future of professional golf here in the States and across the pond over in Europe. A lot of comparisons between these two. They are the future. The only thing I'm going to caution people is say, let's keep those expectations moderate. Let's keep them reasonable, because it's very easy to get caught up in a couple wins, and all of a sudden we think, is this guy going to rattle off 10 or 12 wins in just a few years? We've seen how wonky professional golf can be, and we're going to talk about world rankings later in the show. Let's just keep those expectations moderate. But when we're talking about, I don't want to call it advocates, but when we're talking about representatives of professional golf, Tom Kim is right up there with the best of them be that over the next 5, 10, 15 years. What do you think? Where do you think his arc is going?
First, on that expectation front, I'm a person of a little bit of a prisoner of the moment. After Brooks won at Oak Hill, I said maybe he can rattle off 10 majors in his career. So, you're always going to get those takes from me right after a guy wins. But I don't think I like that comparison with Ludvig Aberg. I think that's a really good spot to kind of look at Tom Kim. I tend to, my original thoughts here quickly. I think Ludvig can be really good. I think Ludvig has the potential to be, this top player in golf, right? Tom Kim, I land him right around the top 5 in the world he could possibly get to. But, more importantly than that, I think Tom Kim is going to be a really good player for the international team at the President's Cup. We saw him at, the age of 20 last year at the President's Cup at Quail Hollow. The Internationals lost that one. Tom Kim went all 5. He went 2 and 3, which isn't a record that pops out at you, on paper. But as a 20-year-old going 2 and 3 at the President's Cup on one of golf's biggest stages is really impressive. So I think how we talk about Ludvig Aberg and the OWGR twins is going to be potential thorns in the side, for the Americans on the European side. I think looking at the international team and looking at the President's Cup, Tom Kim is going to be that guy who's going to be a pain in the neck for the Americans the next 15 years. He's
so level. I think that's the thing. When you think about him as a golfer, what stands out to you? To me, it's how level he is. There's he brings energy, but at the same time, he's so level. He's not letting his emotions get the best of him out on the golf course. He seems to have a really good relationship with his caddy. I've heard a few things about that over the last 2 or 3 days, how it's more of like a friendship partnership than it is a traditional caddy player relationship. So, I think that's it puts him in a really good spot. And frankly, he doesn't play like a 21-year-old.
No, he doesn't. He plays better than that.
I think that's what really makes him and similarly an Aberg kind of guy. They play, the really exceptional ones seem to play beyond their years. and we'll see what he can do.
Did you catch his press conference after he won?
Yeah, all he wanted was that piece of chocolate.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Dying for that piece of chocolate.
He's a 22 or 21-year-old that's won back-to-back years in Vegas, right? And, now he's getting to that age where, you're legal to drink, right, in the States. And you think you might go rip it up in Vegas after you get that victory, right? But no, Tom Kim's talking about the piece of chocolate and getting up in the morning and, and heading to the next tour stop. So I thought that was pretty cool from Tom in the post-game press conference.
And room service. You want to talk about a gamble. Your victory meal is going to be room service. I'm sure the hotel that he was staying at was great. But room service is a gamble that I am not willing to take a few hours before I'm going to be getting on a plane.
Yeah, that's got to eat into the $2 million he won, right?
Yeah, and possibly eat into his stomach too. Fall season, we are rolling through it. A lot of interesting headlines, Nate. What do we have?
So we got to talk about the fall season as a whole for the PGA Tour and kind of look at it, as we're halfway through here and kind of think about what ways we can get better and, what ways are kind of working and kind of the reality of things. So Dylan Wu kind of put it good, I thought for the fall season where he talked about kind of in his tweet where it's kind of weird about how the PGA Tour is kind of maintaining these fields. He had to get into the Shriners Open via the alternate list. They had a guy Monday Q and dropped off the alternate list. And then Dylan Wu kind of flew up there and eventually got in the Shriners. And I think this is kind of interesting to look at, when a player is kind of out speaking, on Twitter. Dylan Wu is usually pretty active on Twitter about kind of how we can get better. And then the TV ratings haven't been stellar, Josh. They've been really, quite frankly, bad. It's something I think that's not necessarily the PGA Tour's fault. Having golf in the fall is going to have bad TV ratings. I think people are watching college football. People are watching the NFL, getting ready for the NHL, the NBA preseasons are going on too. So people are kind of really getting excited for the sports season as it really starts to kick off here in the US in the fall. So I think no matter what you do as from the PGA Tour sense, putting more high profile events and getting bigger guys to play, I don't think that'll really fix the TV ratings in my mind. You might get a little bit better, but I don't know how much better you can do. I think your ceiling is sort of capped with just the time of year you're playing.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think from a technical standpoint for what the PGA Tour wanted to accomplish with players positioning for next season, I think that part of it's working. I haven't seen anything really other than some wonky exemptions and guys that are in the field or not in the field. Other than some stuff like that, it seems like the jockeying that the PGA Tour wanted to see in the fall is happening. But it's not fixing the interest problem, which I think is the bigger problem when we talk about professional golf. The interest problem that televised golf has at the moment. LIV hasn't figured it out. The PGA Tour hasn't figured it out. I don't really think anybody's figured it out yet. How do you make golf on television a compelling product? It's not through a traditional broadcast. And I think that's the thing that most of the powers to be need to get over. Because when you're talking about watching, I'll say it like this. Under normal circumstances, Thursday, Friday, and the first half of Saturday are a really hard sell, even to golf fans. Like to sit and watch golf on Thursday, Friday, and early Saturday, unless you are very dedicated, unless you are a big golf fan, or perhaps over the age of 65, you're not interested. You're not watching it. You might catch clips and you're going to watch bits and pieces of it, but you're not going to watch the broadcast the way the broadcast was intended to be watched. Now, you put it in the fall when you're like you just pointed out, you're competing with college football on Saturday, you're Friday too, really. You're competing with the NFL on Sunday. Good luck. You're never going to win that battle. It's silly to be fighting it. I think what the PGA Tour really should do is over the next couple seasons, especially if we're talking about merging LIV and the PGA Tour and the European Tour into one product, you need to come up with a more compelling way to present it on television. End of story. Yeah,
and I like to think that the PGA Tour has done a lot better job anyway of kind of showcasing some of these fall storylines too, and taking a look at that 125 number and see who's bouncing out and bouncing in with these big putts. And also what I think they've done well, and I think LIV has done a good job of it too, is getting clips to social. and getting, as much golf on your smartphone as much as you can, whether it be TikTok or Instagram or even Twitter, now formerly X. But I think that's really important to do because, like you said, Josh, I think especially in the fall, it's a super hard sell to watch Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. I think even for the common regular golf, not even golf fan, I guess, just a regular consumer. And I think by getting, it on the younger generation on the smartphones to seeing these clips of, a guy knocking in a shot from 100 yards or, a really cool shot. Wesley Bryan had to get in the mud a couple weeks ago, and they put that video out on social. And I think that's really smart. They need to keep pushing clips to social and getting, some of these younger eyeballs on golf, because maybe that gets you to the traditional broadcast. Maybe it doesn't, but it gets interested in your sport. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're listening or watching right now, don't confuse this with a condemnation of the growth of the game. Like, the game is growing. The growth of playing golf is undeniable. It's just watching the product that we see on television, frankly, is lagging like 15 or 20 years behind. Yeah. And that really is the problem. It's sad too, because I think there's a lot of compelling storylines. Obviously, the Lexi story from this past weekend, there's reason to watch. There are very interesting things happening, but it's just not an exciting enough product. One last thing on this point. I think every sport should be doing some kind of like multi-view setup where you can watch multiple holes at the same time. If you are sitting at home and you're watching on a big screen and you're watching on a television and you're not like catching it on your smartphone, you want to be watching multiple things at once. Every major sport now is running multi-view, whatever you want to call it. That is the future. That is the move to make. So you can watch multiple holes at the same time. You can watch three guys who are all battling for those last few spots, and you can be watching the leaders at the same time. That is one of the ways I think that the tour could pretty quickly make inroads in making the product on TV better. But you reminded me of something that I need to say that I don't like. When the announcers go, going to your point there, when the announcers go, just say this was just a moment ago or something like that. When they tell us that this shot already happened before we're seeing it live. And Josh, I think that goes to your point where we need to have some sort of PGA Tour Red Zone. And I know that's a terrible name. And, we need to figure out a way to get on ESPN Plus and, and show this where a narrator's watching and where we're seeing like a multi-view, like you said, we're seeing 4 different holes and guys, battling it out that way. I think that would be really fun and something I think ESPN Plus, they're figuring out. They're doing it with hockey now, and they can look at the NFL Red Zone, and we're doing it a bunch of different ways. So I think that is a really good idea. But Josh, as for growing the game, Lexi Thompson, I think that grows the game. Having Lexi Thompson playing in the PGA Tour event this past week at the Shriners. Amen. It sure does. And she played well.
Yep. 73-69, missed the cut by 3, became the 7th woman ever to play on a PGA Tour event. And Josh, she fit in. She, we were talking so much about, Lexi Thompson playing in this event and just basically thinking about how she drives it shorter than some of these men. And that really isn't true at the end of the day. Lexi Thompson only lost about a third of a stroke off the tee. She was hitting a lot of drives about 300 yards, and she was hitting a lot of fairways too when I was watching. She putted pretty well. She had a really kind of stumbled on the last few holes where she didn't make the cut, but it was a pretty impressive showing for Lexi. And I think what's really cool in some of her, pregame press conferences, she was really, really focused on inspiring young golfers, that this can be a thing happening. And I think this touched a lot of, some of these younger generation golfers, especially women too in the game, kind of showing that, we're here and we're allowed to play this and we're going to play this and we're going to beat you. So I think, Lexi beat a lot of players this week at the Shriners. So I think that's really important from Lexi. And I think she definitely, met her goal of inspiring some of these young players in the game.
She belonged there. We should see more of it. And if you're a dude on X, formerly known as Twitter, shut up. That's all I have to say about that. It's dumb.
Yep.
Reading some of the things that I saw on social media over the weekend, just silly, completely silly. This was a legit golf course that they played last week. This was not a pitch and putt golf course. This was a real golf course. And by the way, she drove a par 4 and she absolutely played her tail off.
It sure did.
End of story. So Just great for the game. Hope we see more of it. You know, like I feel like the timing of it kind of stinks in some way because it's like, yes, high profile event in the fall, but let's find time to do this during the meat of the season as well.
Yeah, but it definitely helps in the fall because, you have a lot of people watching the Shriners that quite frankly didn't care before. So I think in the fall is a good time to do stuff like this with the sponsors exemptions. Yeah.
Well, with limited fields, I mean, we'll have plenty of opportunities to get more people in these events and the quote unquote non-elevated events. Doing something like this with some of those non-elevated events would be a great opportunity to give people a reason to watch, the kind of people who are going to spend most of their time watching these elevated events and not so much the non-elevated ones.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about LIV. Taylor Gooch apparently is the best golfer in LIV.
Yeah, apparently, has 3 wins on the season and was crowned individual champion. So the team championship is happening, and I think it's next week in Miami. 4 aces lead. Let's get that information out of the way, and we'll talk more about what happened. Bigger picture happened in LIV over the past week or so. It's ruled officially there'll be no OWGR, no overall world golf ranking points for any of these LIV players. Josh, I know you have thoughts about it. I have thoughts about it as well. That's going to be really, really big because I think that it was going to happen in my mind where they're going to give them points for these events, but they're not. They say it's not political, which I don't know if that's true. That's what they said it's not. But yeah, what do you have to say about these LIV players not gaining world golf ranking points?
So I guess a couple things. First, on the world ranking front, that's the OWGR system is just dead. It's junk. It doesn't have a place in professional golf anymore. It doesn't make sense, especially given what we've seen in terms of performance from LIV golfers in events where they're playing with and against PGA Tour players. So that being said, I'm up for a complete overhaul. I know a lot of people have been using data golf as kind of the marker, but I'm not even sure that's a good system. I think push comes to shove in the next 2 years, we'll probably have some kind of resolution on this front, because once LIV and the PGA Tour become one, how are LIV guys not going to be acquiring world ranking points? And it feels almost like a weird hill to die on if you are the powers to be with OWGR, not allowing LIV guys to get ranking points at this point. Feels weird.
Yeah, it's a good way in my mind for you to become obsolete. And I think that's, you said it pretty well there too. I don't see how majors are going to carry OWGR in say 5 years or a couple of years even, because how can you have a major championship and not have your quote unquote best players in it, right? You have your majors last year. You have a guy on LIV that won one, and then you have another major where 4 of the top 6 players were from LIV. So, this doesn't matter as much for guys like Brooks Koepka or even Cam Smith, who have or even Bryson DeChambeau, who have these sort of, kind of exemptions into the next few majors. But it's going to really matter for a guy like Taylor Gooch. I mean, Taylor Gooch is obviously, we just got crowned the individual champion on LIV. Say what you want to say about exhibition golf or LIV not being the best golf, but he's a very good player and deserves to be in the majors. So I think they're going to have to try to figure this out if they're majors. With the majors, I mean, trying to figure out how to get our best players in the game, because Taylor Gooch is skyrocketing downward on the OWGR points list. And, that's not a way to figure out the best golfers in the world in my mind.
Yeah, no. And here's the other thing. I was kind of this morning, because I saw you put this on the list, and I was trying to figure out what my thoughts were on it. And this is what I kept running through my head. If you put all of the LIV guys back on the PGA Tour, would the outcomes be any different? These guys wouldn't be going to contend. These guys wouldn't be finishing behind the rest of the PGA Tour field folding up like laundry. They'd be finishing, but not all of them. Right, but they'd be finishing, competing, and more than likely they'd be winning, probably at the same frequency as the rest of the tour, the PGA Tour. That's the part to me that doesn't make a lot of sense, especially sure, by world ranking points, Scottie Scheffler is still the best golfer in the world, except he's not. Except he's just not, right? Yeah. We can admit that. He had a great season, but he forgot how to putt. never figured it out, and looked terrible in the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, he looked very bad in the Ryder Cup.
Don't really see any signs of that changing. I mean, he can come back next year and it all could be gone. But the idea that he is still considered the best golfer in the world when Victor Hovland's been burning the world down, Ludvig Aberg has been playing really well. And frankly, his stock has been shooting up. If this were like a live betting situation, his stock would be in the top 5, I'd assume. And you have a guy like Gooch who's won 3 times in one season. And just because it's LIV, he gets 0. Like, he has nothing to show for it. And by the way, Cam Smith. I mean, a year and a half ago, we were talking about him literally being one of the 2 or 3 best players in the world, period. Yep. And if he didn't go to LIV, I'm pretty confident that he would be the best golfer in the world right now by points, because he wouldn't have just not won anything between then and now. I refuse to believe that.
No, that's very true. And I think Dustin Johnson, wins an event on tour if he plays all season. And he's been one of the most consistent players on tour, in the last 20 years. So I think Dustin Johnson wins an event. He won a LIV event. I don't know how you equate that to the PGA Tour, but I would be hard pressed to say that if Dustin Johnson played 30 or whatever times on the PGA Tour last year, he doesn't win an event.
Yeah. And, Bryson is another guy who has essentially had a rebirth over the last year. And again, you're not getting any, I think there were more people than we might have seen on the surface who thought he would have been a great fit on the Ryder Cup team. But, he's not. I mean, he continues to fall down the list, even though he performed, he had a fair showing in the majors. So, again, it's one of those things where I think the world ranking system just needs to be completely overhauled. We need to totally reinvent this thing. I'm not sure how it calculates. Who knows? Maybe it even takes into account events like the TGR events that are going to be coming into the system here in the next year or so. I don't know. Got to do something.
Let's flip over the PGA Tour, Josh. We got some really fun information that we're going to go with here at the Hero World Challenge happening at the end of November into December down at the Bahamas. All the top players are involved, Josh, but they released the field. I think it's about 75 to 78 players, and they left one spot open. I wonder who would be in that spot. Probably the man named Tiger Woods. We've seen him, kind of been on pictures lately. Josh, did you see that picture where he's playing golf on the golf course? He's wearing basketball shorts, a backwards hat, and sunglasses, and a Call of Duty hoodie. First of all, that's a story in itself that Tiger was out there wearing that. But I think it's fair to assume that, if everything goes well health-wise in the next, month and a half, or not even that much until that event happens, where do you think Tiger definitely plays in this event? Or do you think he has a potential setback, or where are you kind of putting the percentages of Tiger playing in the Bahamas?
You know what? I think it's inside 50-50. Like, I think it's better than 50-50 odds.
I think it's even better than that. Yeah.
But he's, again, I hope everybody kind of like moderates their expectations here. Like, we don't think he's going to go out and win, right?
Probably not.
Like, he's not going to do that.
Just finish 4 rounds and I'll be happy.
I mean, you watch him swing a golf club, and I know a lot of people are saying, like, he looks good. He still has his hands. I mean, his legs are a fraction of the size they were a few years ago. That is not the build of a person who can win a professional golf tournament in 2023 or 2024 or any date in the future. I think he even knows that.
Yeah.
But I think he wants to get back out there. I think it's good to have him ceremonially back out there involved in these events, especially events that are so important to him, that this is his event.
Right.
I think it's good to have him in the game, especially given, what we're seeing. But we are now, I have fully accepted the fact that we are now in twilight Tiger years.
Yep.
And
you talk about the TGR, he is going to be a force in the TGR. He doesn't have to walk in that. He can still hit a golf ball. We know that. Let's talk about the Zozo happening this week over in Japan at Accordia Golf Club in Narashino County. Josh, Keegan Bradley, one of the guys we've talked a lot about, is your defending champion. He kind of started that run of really good golf, happening. This is always a fun event, getting the global golf scene over in Japan too. Really good fans. They always show up and are loud and proud for their players. But note the time difference. Just wanted to make sure everyone knows that play begins on Wednesday night. So make sure if you're a DFS guy that you get your lineups in today, if you're listening here on Wednesday. And, you get your bets into before Wednesday night. But Golf Channel has the coverage starting at 11 p.m. So if you're not a night owl, I am not. You're going to be able to watch a little bit of this tournament tonight starting at about 11, which will be really fun. Josh, Xander Schauffele is playing in this event. He is the favorite at 7-1. Colin Morikawa comes in at 12-1 second, and Sungjae Im at 14-1. Do you have a winner pick for us, or any thoughts are going on with the Zozo Championship this weekekend?
Minwoo Lee. Minwoo Lee is my pick, and
last week.
It's something you and I talked about before the show started. Is just it's silly to have this event at this point of the year. It's weird to me to have it.
Yeah, it's weird.
This is one of those events that I think is enough of a gem. I mean, the crowds that we see over there for this are so impressive. I want this in the middle of the season. I want this in the heart of the season, coming down the stretch, heading into the FedEx Cup playoffs. I want it then because I want to see that kind of event. I know the time difference is an issue. That's probably why it wouldn't happen, because the PGA Tour knows that they're going to lose out big time on broadcast again, like we talked about. Nobody wants to watch anything on tape delay. But when you're talking about growing the game, what's good for the game, this event is good for the game.
Yeah, I think with the emergence of the PIF, you're going to see eventually when the PGA Tour schedule gets revitalized, you're going to see a Western Hemisphere swing, right? We're going to go to Japan, we're going to go to Australia, and maybe, that there are some other different countries, around that way. And I think that's going to be really cool to see down the road. But yeah, it being in November is a little bit of a weird thing to me. What's really weird is last week we were in America, and then in 2 weeks we're back in North America. We're in Mexico. But I think that's kind of weird too. I think if you were to get this event, kind of in the more high profile part of the season, and with that a little bit of a swing too, you're going to see more these big guys playing. You do have Xander Schauffele and Colin Morikawa playing in this event, 2 Ryder Cup. The first time we've seen American Ryder Cuppers that aren't on LIV play in an event since that day. So I think that's something to think about too. But everything's just going to change in a few years with the emergence of the PIF, right? So I think we'll see it in a more meaty part of the season in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was, if I recall correctly, that was one of the things that we saw criticized pretty heavily when the new schedule dropped, was kind of the bizarre travel implications of the schedule, bouncing from coast to coast, bouncing across the ocean back over, that kind of stuff. I think really needs to be figured out so that, all of these events can get optimal players participating.
Speaking of Colin Morikawa, I have him this week, 12-1 to win the event. And a pick that I really like actually is Aaron Ray, top 20 at plus 150 over at DraftKings. Aaron's played pretty well from the beginning of the year. He's kind of had some, interesting ones the last few weeks, but I think Aaron, going over to his home, a little bit closer to home, being from England, I think Aaron gets it done in the top 20 and possibly even contends this week at the Zozo Championship.
All right. Hey, that's going to do it for this edition of Out of Bounds. Subscribe to the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. And of course, if you're out there playing this weekend, if you're in the Northeast, I'm sorry, because you're playing in the wet and cold. Still, you know the drill. Whether it's down the middle or out of bounds, keep on swinging.
You've been listening to Out of Bounds. If it's coverage, debate, or discussion of pro and local golf, we'll be talking about it. Be sure to visit the website. Find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. See you next time on Out of Bounds.